join me hands to thank Engineer Chujai to give an excellent lecture on mining industry because this is the industry where many people don't know what is going on there. So it's always great to hear from somebody who is from industry. Okay. So as part of that, we requested Chujai to join us to give a lecture, and he happily came and delivered a lecture. Thank you very much, Chujai, once again. Okay. So with that, we invite our next, our guest speaker, Jithendra Abburi. So I hope Jithendra is on the call already. Okay. So we are going to talk about very important and very important session now. We are going to talk about, so let me, somebody is waiting. So we are going to talk about driving sustainability, ESG integration in supply chain and manufacturing industry. So this is a topic. I think when you talk about the latest trends or latest innovations or latest technologies, latest frameworks, methodology, whatever. So ESG is one of them. Okay, along with AI in technology, ESG is in the governance and in the management. So ESG is something which is very burning topic. Okay, so and this is the best time to hear from Jithendra Abburi about this topic. So Jithendra, if you are in the call, you can join us.
Hi, Abdullah, I'm on the call. Just
Yeah.
let me know if you are able to hear me okay.
Yeah, I can see you now. So thank you, Jithendra, for joining the call. So let me give you a quick round of introduction for you, and then you can take it from there. Okay.
Yep.
So Jithendra, an alumnus of BITS Pilani, brings 16 plus years of expertise in financial derivatives, risk management, climate risk management, and sustainability. As a certified climate risk professional and PMP, he excels in managing complex risks and advancing sustainability initiatives. I think there will be a lot of interesting things Jithendra will speak about. So happy to hear you, Jithendra. So please feel free to introduce yourself, your company, and then proceed for the demonstration.
Sure, Mr. Abdullah. And first of all, thanks very much. With one brief meeting with you in one of the sessions, you invited me to be a part of this prestigious summit. Thanks to you. So Mr. Abdullah has given a kind of introduction to me of what I've been doing, what I'm currently doing. So I'll give a brief introduction of myself as well. So I'm Jithendra. I'm an alumnus from BITS Pilani, and so right from my start of the career, I've been working in financial, institutions like one of those big banks and all. So I've been a part of a lot of captives before, worked on a lot of financial derivatives, commodities, acted as a trader assistant. So that's more from operational risk. And the one thing which caught my eye when I was actually working in these firms is how the banks and other institutions are moving towards, the new. I won't term it as new, but something which has been in the world for so long, but again, which has gained traction over the years in the previous decade or so, is the climate risk. How people are actually approaching to mitigating the climate risk. What are the available technologies? What are the ways of mitigating or adapting to climate risk? And also the social and governance part of it, which obviously becomes the ESG part of it. So I'm going to share the presentation, and I would like to check with you if you're able to view it properly.
Appreciate.
Give me a second. So just let me know if you're able to view this.
You can see it. You see the nice sea view of a hilly location.
Are you able to see the text on it by any chance?
No, text is there. I think it says it's your screen.
Jitendra, that's your desktop that we are looking at. We don't have any icons on the desktop. So,
Right. Give me a second then. Give me a working on Mac, so it's a little. Let me
Select right.
sort. Yes, yes. I think I haven't started my presentation yet. So now,
nothing yet. So open the PPT file in presentation mode first, and then
I
go
did.
to share.
I did. I'm a
Okay.
little.
Then when you click on share, you need to select the right window, the PPT which is in presentation mode, and hit share again.
Give me a sec. Okay, let me quickly log into my Windows. This one. It shouldn't take much time. Give me a minute. I'll be there. Yeah. I'm just heading out of this. Just give me a second.
Yeah.
So can you hear me okay now?
Yes. We can hear you.
Okay, apologies for that. I think there's some issue with my Mac, which worked fine a little while ago, which I did a recce kind of a thing.
But it's a matter of time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we can see your presentation.
Wonderful. Okay.
Yeah.
So, like Mr. Abdul was saying about driving sustainability and ESG integration in the supply chain and manufacturing industries, I'm novice, to be honest, to supply chain and manufacturing industries, as I've already almost spent 15 years of career on the financial services side of it. But what we have done in the last 1 year or so is we set up a firm called Educator, with the importance of the ESG integration, irrespective of the industry, be it manufacturing, which definitely will take the top tier, and also the rest of the industries where the ESG integration is required in terms of to drive sustainability in the future, and making sure that we're giving it back to the society, making sure the carbon emissions are mitigated or made minimum. So what we are into is basically more like a training organization, where we make sure the the corporates, irrespective of the industry, know about what ESG is and how to integrate it into the respective industries that being a part of. Now, I'll I'll talk about the agenda. So obviously, I mean, most of you are from the manufacturing industry and have heard of the word ESG before.
First slide.
Sorry.
Jithendra, we are in the first slide. Did you put it in the presentation mode?
It's in the presentation mode.
Now we are seeing agenda, but it is not in the presentation mode. It is in the PPT mode.
Okay.
There is a little trick here. Yeah. So can you just make it
Okay,
presentation from here? Let us see if it works. Can you click the presentation mode?
presentation mode on the PPT. I just did that.
Yeah, click it. You clicked it?
Yeah, I did.
No, it is not. It's not visible. So maybe another window is there for presentation. So
Okay.
while sharing, you can share. Yeah. Just you can put the PPT into a presentation and then share the screen.
Okay, let me do that first,
That is a little
which
tricky
I
here.
did somehow. Yeah, I think it should be okay now. Is it?
Yep, perfect. Perfect.
Done. Okay, so the agenda of today will be explaining or maybe giving a brief about what ESG is. What are the sustainable development goals? What are one to three emissions? Obviously, the Paris Agreement, where the major thing happened in 2015, and what circular economy is. And we come to the point where why the ESG is relevant to the manufacturing and supply chain industries, and what are the challenges that industry is currently facing, or something which we can anticipate in the future as well, and why integration is vital. It's just not for manufacturing and supply chain industry, but it's for all the industries where ESG integration is why it is vital. What are the key strategies? Usually some of those strategies are already covered by Mr. Chuzai and Mr. Chris yesterday, and also a few by Mr. Rajesh a little while ago. So what are the green technologies which are in vogue for supply chain and manufacturing industries? And few case studies, I would talk about some positive ones where actually things worked for firms, and followed by the emerging trends, and how one measures ESG, in the form of a framework, why should one measure it, and how measures it. And there's a small example of one of these rating agencies that come up with a framework where they provide a table on which what the laggards, what the leaders, etc. And the main part is what are challenges in adopting ESG. So the industries are currently facing their own challenges in terms of it, and this cannot be another burden for them to actually adopt to certain things, which can be challenges in the initial phases of the adoption, but may or will probably result in terms of cost saving, in terms of having the industry going really well. And so how to address these is the most important part of it, which I'll be taking care of. And few pointers where we talk about ESG integration and what's happening in the global arena, and also what's happening from an Indian perspective in terms of in terms of numbers. And I would conclude again with what's happening and what one needs to do to have ESG integrated into their organization. And I'm happy to take questions once this is done. So Abdul, sir, I want to check if you see me moving to the next slide.
Yes, very much. Yeah, please.
Thank you. Okay, so what's ESG? ESG, I mean, it's one of those buzzwords, one of the keywords which every one of us is hearing, whenever we attend any events, whenever we attend any summits, or listen to the management when they talk about it in their disclosures, annual statements, etc. Now, what ESG is? It's nothing but it's a framework used to assess an organizational business practices and its performance and various sustainability and ethical issues. Now, of what we have been hearing is to look into the financial statements about how well a particular company has performed over the years, or how well so basically a financial statement. But there are certain important non-financial statements which have gained traction in the last few decades, which also are a major what I say, a requirement for an investor to think about investing into a particular firm. So that's where ESG comes into picture. The ratings come into picture. It says it also provides a way to measure business risks and opportunities. Now, if there is a risk, it can either be mitigated or it cannot be adopted to. But then it also comes up with opportunities. Now, so once we get into this framework, which imbibes itself into the organizational structure, being a part of the enterprise risk management, it throws obviously risks. And along with it, if we manage the ESG part of it properly, we also are given right opportunities to mitigate those risks. And again, in capital markets, I would say some investors is not the right word here. Majority of the investors, they use ESG criteria to evaluate companies, and depending upon how well the particular firm is doing in terms of ESG, to determine the investment plans. Now, this practice is typically known as ESG investing. So in fact, the thing is, I visited one of these events like 2 weeks ago, and there were who from this particular sustainability field there. So the key word was there to please the investors in terms of providing them with the right and correct information, assured information from one of the biggies, saying whatever the information is being provided to the investors is right. It's very similar to how we talk about the auditing, right? The auditing where we have one of those big four companies to give assurance, do an audit, come up with a ratification saying yes, these companies are in line with whatever regulations are, be it a global regulator or a local regulator. So it's very similar to this, albeit on a non-financial front. Now, each of these letters, ESG, is called a pillar. Now, environmental, which knowingly or unknowingly, which we have been dealing with all these days, irrespective of the industry. Social, again, is something which is very, very important, which sometimes people tend to ignore or give a stepmotherly treatment. And governance as well. Governance, if not managed properly, may lead to some catastrophic issues, which might also lead to the downfall of the particular firm, thereby having a ripple effect, impacting the industry in a whole. Okay, so environmental, I would have just go through it. So biodiversity and habitat, climate change, which people usually tend to get confused with what is climate change, what is sustainability, what is ESG. These three are three different topics altogether. Climate change is just a part of, or climate change risk management is a part of environmental pillar. And the rest of the topics being land contamination, how the energy is being consumed, the GHG, which is again, I'm sure most of the manufacturing companies are aware of how to reduce the carbon, or just not the carbon dioxide emissions or carbon emissions, but it can also be some other greenhouse gases which have to be curtailed to have a proper future for this planet. Now, it's just not the outdoor thing. You also have indoor environmental quality, which has to be maintained to have a better and a very good way of running a business or a firm. Now, location and transportation materials is where the supply chain industry, it fits in. So where does the warehouse is located? Where is the warehouse located? Where is the firm located? Where are the suppliers located? And because see, it all depends on the fact that if you have a supplier on the coastal region and there is a chance of having a hurricane or a tsunami or a typhoon there, then again we usually tend to move away from that supplier. So so even in location transportation, what kind of materials being used? Where are they getting mined from? Where are they getting sourced from? Are forests getting cut, or is there an illegal mining or illegal way of getting things out of the ground? So that's one of the things which is also a concern, or which is also thing which requires some kind of attention. Pollution, resilience to catastrophe and disaster, and how one is prepared to tackle a kind of a catastrophe or a disaster. It's called basically how resilient are you to a particular natural disaster. Renewable energy, there are alternative forms of energy where we source power from. Procurement, how sustainable the procurement is. That's one of the important topics again. Waste management and water consumption. Waste management, it's where the circular economy comes into picture, where how you are dealing with your waste, where it is being, I wouldn't say dumped, or is it being used properly, logically, and sustainably? So that's waste management is also one of the factors of environmental pillar. And water consumption. The water, again, it's something which may or may not last, and it needs to be judiciously used. So water consumption also requires certain kind of measurement, how much it is being used, to check if there is any other ways of doing or running a machine without using water, etc. Coming to social, of course, social, which is closely related to the CSR activities that India has been doing over 2 or 3 decades. So how we deal with the community development, the area or the region that we are operating in. It's just not us, but the community should also be developed. Health and safety for our own employees, and also health and safety of the people getting affected by having a factory or or something which is manufacturing something. And human rights, of course, it's the labor law dates back to 1960s in India, and human rights are one of the paramount things that one should consider while running this framework. Labor standards and working conditions, typically where like Mr. Chuzai was saying about having driverless trucks. Working conditions, maybe there are certain regions, certain places of mining or a mine where humans cannot go, and even if they go, they are risking it. Social enterprise partnering. Now, there are certain NGOs whom we can talk to, understand how they can help us in having by partnering them, how we can elevate the social fabric. Stakeholder relations. So manufacturing supply chain will have the suppliers, the manufacturers, consumers. So how the relationships are being maintained with the stakeholders. Occupier amenities, controversial tenants. And controversial tenants, though it sounds a typical, which is unrelated to this topic, but again, if one is having, say, for example, a building which is rented out to a toxic tenant, then how do you deal with it? It's having an impact, definitely. So a social pillar, and again, these lists are not exhaustive. Things get added now and then. There could be some things which are already addressed to, and they can get off this list. So coming to the governance, yes, again, if I were to invest in, so I've recently invested in one of the firms, and first thing I did was to check who are the directors who are on board, their background, how they are, what are their skills, the key man risk that I'm talking about, if they are very well versed or very well equipped to run the show, and also if they are clean in terms of like with the money laundering thing, the bribery thing, So this is also again is meted out stepmotherly treatment, but again, governance is very, very important, because one little mistake on the governance front will spell doom to any of the firms. So cybersecurity, again, the second point here, if you do not have data protection properly, then yeah, it can lead to catastrophic effects. Protection and privacy, data protection, privacy, legal and regulatory fines. This is one of the most important things again, which can lead to reputational loss. Can also lead to the people will be ready to pounce on you if you are in news for some wrong reason. So and again, social enterprise partnering, again, it's very similar to what I've told about the social pillar. Stakeholder relations also is the same. Yes, controversial tenants. These have to be maintained properly, and they have to be. It's a very the line has to be, or the rope has to be threaded properly to make sure there is no reputational loss. So governance is a very important pillar, and yeah, this is one of my favorite. In fact, the favorite one among the three pillars. So yeah, that's about ESG and the three pillars. In yeah, so is sustainability development goals is a very important topic, which is also being discussed in schools now. So my elder one is she can tell these goals by heart by closing her eyes. So yeah, I mean, so this is something where all your environmental, social, economic components that we just spoke about fall under. This is something which has come into picture, like maybe a decade ago, where so goals have to be set, they have to be met. So that's a key sentence for these things. So we have goals, so we have a plan to achieve those, and that's where the goals have come up. These three encompass all the parameters that we just spoke about, all the things that we which are required to run the show in terms of ESG compliant. So this is, I mean, self-explanatory, but I mean, this is something which is available everywhere. You can have a look whenever you have time. But if you insist me to take this through, I'll probably take it at the end of the session. Is that okay, Mr. Abel?
Yes, why not? Yeah, please.
Sure. Thanks. Okay. So again, this is one of the things people. Before this, I've done a survey like 2 weeks ago with people who are into SMEs, right? These people who are either the CEOs or on top levels in SMEs. Now, I created a survey and asked them how well they do know about ESG, and the results was surprising, not shocking but surprising. So it was more like 50% of them they said heard of it. 50% of them said no. I mean, yeah, we it's more like something alien to us. Maybe we are doing it, but we don't know if this falls under the ESG framework. Now, one of the questions in this was if they know what's Paris Agreement all about. Then 90% of them said they heard it, they don't know what it's all about. So this is something which, though, I mean, there have been different COPs, the conferences of parties, where the industry biggies, the experts meet every year. So this time it was in Baku, Azerbaijan. So it's the conference of parties is where people meet, albeit they fly, which again is an irony because there's no other, there is hardly any alternative for the ATF, airline turbine fuel. But again, these people meet, decide, or think about what's happening currently. How do we tackle? They set up the goals in the form of a ratchet mechanism, saying they tighten every year. So this time, if say I'm emitting say 100 megatons of carbon equivalent, the next year it should be say 50. Then it should be 25 the next year. So it's basically tightening the screw. So Paris Agreement of 2015-16 is considered to be the most important one, where the main goal was to increase to hold the increase in the global average temperature to well below 2 degrees centigrade above the pre-industrial levels. And so this is basically to arrest the increase in the global average temperature. At the same time, we can put efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees. In Baku, the COP which happened a few months ago, so it's like if we were to consider how much progress we have made in terms of Paris Agreement, that whatever we was decided on 15-16, it was only 45% of the progress has been made. And at this moment, I think it's 43% here, which I mentioned. So there's still a lot of things to do to achieve this goal. And unfortunately, we are lagging in terms of reaching this goal. Now, it's one of the other things which was discussed. I mean, so we know that the administration has changed in the U.S. and we've had Trump coming out of the Paris Agreement when he was in power the last time. So people are waiting with fingers crossed how things will be in the next term. Once Trump comes into power, and that's on Jan 20th, if I'm not wrong. So there are certain things which swing either way, which can make or break things here, because US is definitely the developed one of the developed countries, and any effect there will have a ripple effect. So people are waiting with bated breath. And there have been a lot of international efforts, a lot of collaborations, a lot of alliances. Each country had made some advancements, but the current trajectory suggests the Paris Agreement goal definitely not within the reach. So these are something which are again. So if you're planning for something which which is being considered as a goal, one needs to make sure the plan is in place or decided about the plan to meet that goal. But what we're looking at is the last 9 years or 10 years, we were nowhere close to achieving this goal. So hopefully, this ratchet mechanism that I'm talking about, where screws get tightened in terms of just not climate, but also the social and the governance front, will lead to good results in the future. Okay, and there was one other point that I spoke about, the greenhouse gases. But again, most of you must have heard of scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. Now I just will give brief of what 1, 2, and 3 scope emissions are. Okay, scope 1 is, and again, GHG protocol doesn't just cover carbon dioxide or carbon related, gases. The other nitrogen related ones, hydrofluorocarbons, related to nitrogen related fluorides. So the other things apart from carbon, the many greenhouse gases, albeit in a small thing in the atmosphere, but again they have to be made sure that the number will come down to meet the goals. Now, scope 1 is basically the company facilities and company vehicles. Now, so whatever facilities that as a company I'm running lead to certain gases which are emitted into the atmosphere, and the vehicles which are owned by the company and are being run also emit carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide. So those fit under the scope 1 emissions. Scope 2 are something which you purchase energy, or it can be any form of energy, so which is letting you emit gases or carbon dioxide or any of these GHGs. So again, anything that is purchased for heating or cooling the machines is again, which is the resultant emissions will come under scope 2. Purchase steam as well. Typically, it's purchased energy which is used to run your machines, which makes you run the operations smoothly on a daily basis, come under scope 2. Now, scope 3, the two parts of it, upstream and downstream activities. The supply chain part comes into these things. Now, scope 3, upstream. So basically, whatever is coming to the firm, the related emissions will come under scope 3. And the downstream activities where, so for example, I'm building cars, and cars are being sold. Cars emit carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide. So those come under downstream activities in terms of the scope 3. So this is GHG protocol. I mean, and the new thing has come up like scope 4 of late, which is basically avoidable emissions. Now, what is avoidable emission is, now if I am a manufacturer of, say, for example, an electric appliance, which is intended to reduce emissions. Now, I can account those emissions on my behalf and say, okay, so I'm emitting say 100 megatons or whatever. So 5 tons, I'm making sure that my product is reducing it on whoever buys it. So I can come up to 95 there. So that's scope 4 emissions, which is more like a positive way of thinking of it, saying I'm emitting on one side, but also making sure my product is lessening the result of it. So something which has come into picture, but it's not a part of GHG protocol, but something which has come into picture of late, where people are talking about it. So why can't we this be included when we are talking about net zero, when we are talking about carbon reduction, sequestration, when I'm emitting 100, I'm sequestering 10, so I'm net 90. So this is also one of the things that is being discussed. Okay. Circular economy, one of the other key points that is being talked about of late. So it's about how the linear economy works, where the input, process, output, waste being dumped. Now, circular economy is something is typically how do you remanufacture, refurbish a particular product. So obviously there's some waste leakage, definitely, but definitely not on par with what linear economy does for us. So it's a typical, the circle where you say recycle, reuse, and refurbish, produce it again, use the parts. Say, for example, a laptop, use the parts to prepare another refurbished laptop, come up with it. So this is again a key term which is very much valid to the manufacturing industry. Where again, it's one of the things who are already into the industry will definitely know about this and are already working towards it. So this is one of the key factors in the ESG. Now, coming to the relevance of ESG to the supply chain and manufacturing industries. I actually segregated it into 4 things, which have 3 pillars: ESG and also the economic impact of it. So why it is relevant to supply chain manufacturing industries, and all the more it in fact started with the manufacturing industries, where the climate part of it, the working conditions, the labor laws, how the social front of it. So the relevance has already been always been there, and it's gaining more importance now. We've had few sessions before where they spoke about the green, the sustainability part of it, the mining, the cement industry, the hard to abate industries. So the environmental relevance is basically how the sustainable resource is being managed. All right. So if I am manufacturing, say, for example, a toy, now I have to make sure whatever I'm using to make or the manufacture the toy, the resources that I'm using, I have to manage it. So again, there are certain things which are unavoidable. So we have to rely on certain things which have to be input for creating a toy or some kind of something which has plastic or something which has more emissions to it. But again, how do we deal with managing this resources? Now we have to check for alternatives if there is one, if there is anything that can be replaced, etc. So again, when it comes to energy efficiency relevance, of course, because manufacturing industries run on energy power, albeit it's a renewable one or whatever that is currently being used in terms of so there are certain power or generations which are currently being talked about. It's definitely one of the relevant factors to manufacturing industry, because without energy and without having power, the industries cannot run at this moment. And then how efficiently the energy can be utilized. So this is again a relevant factor to it. Regulatory compliance. So coming to this, the developed countries have a very good compliance structure in place in terms of regulatory compliance. A small mistake here and there, failure to disclose something will draw hefty penalties. Now, if I'm setting up a firm or a manufacturing industry in India, I have to take a lot of permissions. I have to make sure I'm complying with a lot of tribunals, etc. Now, it's again relevant, because if I don't consider them, if I bypass them, then I'm liable to paying hefty penalties. So regulatory compliance is also one of the important things for a manufacturing industry and a supply chain industry. Make sure we take, so for example, the water resources around us, the air, and the pollution board, the water board. We take a lot of permissions and a lot of things when we start a particular manufacturing industry somewhere or a factory somewhere. And circular economy integration, I just spoke about it, how how to reuse or reproduce from waste instead of dumping it. It's also relevant. Now, coming to the social relevance, yes, human rights protection. Now, so obviously an automation has taken place, but again, there is a majority of human intervention in whatever we are manufacturing or doing. So human rights, and the rights have to be protected. They have to make sure they have their the working hours the bonuses, the pays, the wages, the facilities that are getting within a particular factory or with a particular manufacturing industry. Social, that's from our perspective. If you are setting up a firm, that's from our perspective, how the human rights are being protected. Again, it also impacts the people who are living, close to or in proximity to these factories and manufacturing industries. Their rights are also to be protected. We have to make sure they're also not getting affected adversely. Community impact is very close to this. So, right and judicious utilization of water, and other resources around us to make sure the community around us, the society that is living around us, they are not getting affected adversely. Diversity and inclusion. You must have definitely heard of DEI, diversity, inclusion. So basically, the composition of the staff of a particular factory, the composition of a particular, say, management, executive committee. So this is one of the important, very, very important things which needs to be considered. And this is very relevant to just not manufacturing industry and just not the supply chain industry, but all industries where, so one of the banks that I worked before, the management committee had 59% of women running the show and 41% men, although that whole firm had 48, 46, 54% in terms of women to men ratio. But again, like I said, people are understanding how important it is to have the diversity and inclusion part of it while we are running the operations. Consumer trust. Now, so again, if I'm manufacturing something and the consumer is well informed of late and knows how the whole supply chain is running, how the initiation of the resources to the end product, if the consumer gets to know if in any of these phases we are doing something which is against the trust, which is against the ESG things, or we are doing something bad to the environment, then the trust will be broken, and then there's a high chance that the consumer will stop buying stuff from us. So definitely, this kind of relevance is present. And governance, yes, I think I spoke briefly about it while I was taking through the agenda items and the ESG pillars. Of course, the risk mitigation, how well the governance or board of directors or the people who are running the show are good at mitigating the risk. Supply chain transparency, how transparent we are in terms of, so it doesn't necessarily mean that someone who's actually overseeing what's happening in terms of getting the raw materials, how the things are running in the machine, how the end product is. So how the one who's actually governing, or the one who's actually managing, or who's running the show, should also be aware of each of these things. He should be, or she should be, knowing how transparent the supply chain players are or participants are, without which there's always a high chance that people tumble upon not knowing stuff and end up being, it's one of the suppliers is not good, or have or has a background which is not in good terms, then probably it will lead to catastrophic results. Stakeholder alignment, how well the stakeholder alignment is being done, how well or how good or how satisfied they are in terms of so be it someone who is actually consuming it, be it someone who's related to creating the raw materials for us, how satisfied they are, if they're doing it judiciously, if they're doing it righteously, if they're doing it properly in complying with things and regulations, then the alignment has to be in such a way that it should be governed properly. The whole alignment of stakeholders has to be governed properly. One mistake here and there will again cause disturbances. Innovation and competitiveness. Again, I have to say that I worked with one of the banks where still they're using Excel in terms of preparing reports and doing stuff. They are not into creating dashboards and all. So one cannot be laggard when you have a lot of technological advancements happening here and there. So manufacturing industry, again, which Mr. Tuzai has spoken about, how the satellites are used and how driverless trucks are being used. And I met one of these guys. It's one of the case studies I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. So again, how the EVs are being used, how hydrogen run vehicles are used to supply transport raw materials here from here and there. So if a particular firm is not innovative enough or not competitive enough, then again, yeah, it's very difficult to sustain and very challenging world. And the most important part is the economic impact. Cost savings, of course. Initially, it will be a cost. Cost will be high, definitely, to adopt to certain technologies and certain things which will, in a long term, help us in saving a lot of costs. But Mr. Chuzai said that it's more like an investment rather than spending money on it. So it's invest, reap the benefits in the long term. So cost savings is again a very good impact. It's a positive impact. Market differentiation, again, company A, company B, company A is into ESG, discloses its metrics properly to regulators, has a very good supply chain, has green supply chain, has good warehousing capability, and also uses electric vehicles, alternative fuels, etc. B does the opposite. Then obviously there is always a chance that investors go to company A rather than B. Investment opportunities, which is close to this, A will get more investment opportunities than B. Long-term resilience, initial hiccups, baby steps, create resilience. Tomorrow, A will be more resilient than B in terms of climate risk management, in terms of reputation management, in terms of you just name it, you have it. So the relevance is it's always there. Again, I just spoke about the things which are off late have become very important. uh so challenges, industry challenges, again, three pillars that I mentioned about it. High emissions. Manufacturing industries definitely are prone to high emissions with the way that they're using their machinery, etc. Resource inefficiency, be it just not human, just not the raw material resources I'm talking about, power, human resources, anything that is used to create a product is a resource. Inefficient thing will definitely cause issues, because if you don't have a plan B and you are emitting a lot and you don't have a renewable energy plan in place, the inefficiency will lead to, again, downfall. We have seen a lot before in terms of how companies have fallen in terms of having inefficient resources. Waste management, one needs to make sure the waste is managed properly, just not dumped somewhere, make sure it is being used. Of course, there will be a leakage. Again, it's minor, it has to be minor, and it has to be audited properly, it has to be supervised or overseen properly. Climate impact mitigation, again, a factory which thinks it's close to a riverbed and operating it because of the water that is available there, and suddenly a flood comes and it's get flooded, then again that's a problem. So it has to be resilient enough to mitigate the climate impact as well. So again, a good a firm which, or a factory which has been set up, or a warehouse which has been set up in a seismically active zone, again, it attracts a lot of the climate related impacts. So again, so one needs to think about how to mitigate such risks. Social unsafe working conditions. Of course, I spoke about it 2 or 3 times already. Ethical concerns. So when we talk about having lithium batteries, for example, but one needs to understand where the lithium that we're talking about is being mined from. Is it being done properly, justly, and is it being done within the binding regulations of a particular regulator locally and also globally? So this is something which, the oil spills which are happening, and also there was a big accident in Bangladesh a few years ago where a lot of people were crammed in a particular warehouse or a factory. So a lot of things which are still persisting, which are challenges which have to be really talked about, and the challenges are to be addressed properly to have a very good ESG score for us to take it to an investor, ask them, I have this very good ESG score, why don't you invest in me? So these are certain things which are very important and have to be really taken care of. Lack of diversity, again, having a score on less on diversity, again, attracts a little so obviously it's not very good for someone who's actually looking for prospective investors. Stakeholder management, again, if it's not managed properly, will lead to certain issues where it's very difficult to come out of, very difficult to address such challenges. So, and again, governance one, it's non-compliance with regulations, supplier ethics, how ethical the suppliers are. Just not if I'm ethical doesn't mean the suppliers are ethical. We have to make sure each step how the suppliers are, where they are sourcing the raw materials from, and where they are sourcing the power from, what types of vehicles are running. For example, if someone is using a Tempo which is more than 15 years old and doesn't have a certificate to run beyond 15, you are doing very well, but again, one of your suppliers is not doing good, then again, it's going to impact. Corruption, I mean, it's something which is difficult to weed out, but again, having very good committees to take care of anti-bribery things, how weeding out corruption. So I know a firm where they've set up a committee with people from outside, so who are the legal advisors to big firms and who are into NGOs. So they've set up this anti-bribery committee in one of the banks that I work for. So they made sure that they've actually tackled such things, the gift policy, whatever it is. So the corruption can be a small or big one, but yeah, it has to be weeded out completely. Unethical practices, it's very close to what I spoke about the supplier ethics. So one cannot have unethical practices in doing. So if I'm giving out batteries, lithium batteries, but again I'm sourcing it from someone who's getting the lithium mined out of some other, where the conditions are not good, where kits are being used. So again, so that's unethical practice. Though I'm not doing it, but again, it's more like it comes back to us saying, it's you're involved in it. So yeah, I mean the challenges are really there, and they have to be tackled properly, abiding by the regulations, abiding by the laws, making sure it leads to a very good ESG score, which helps in attracting investors, also contributing to the society. Why ESG integration is vital? Now, SDGs that I talked about, Sustainable Development Goals. So one will be aligning with those global SDGs. Reduction of environmental footprint. This is under the environmental pillar, where we make sure that we are reducing the carbon emissions, etc. Enhancement of brand reputation and trust. Of course, if we have a very good score, we have investors queuing up, investing in us. Definitely, it enhances our reputation, and also the consumers, the customers, the suppliers, the stakeholders will have trust in us. Well, it's a compounded effect. It snowballs into a very something which exponentially, which increases our reputation. Attracting investors, competitive advantage gets increased. Long-term cost savings and risk management. So initially, one might feel, okay, I'm putting say $1 billion in setting up technology, something which is helping me. At this moment, it looks a huge figure, but again, investing $1 billion, which makes or helps you gain a lot in the coming 10 years, then why wouldn't go? It's similar to investing in technology. Why not? I'll go for it. Lots of long-term cost savings is, again, for someone who thinks that this cannot be done, I don't have money to invest in such technologies. Again, think about it. One can actually think about it and think long-term, how it can impact you, and positively. Key strategies for ESG integration. Which is not totally different from what I've been talking in terms of, so for a manufacturing industry, adopting green manufacturing technologies is one of the important things. I'll speak about it in the next slide, where I have a list of green technologies that are being used. Sustainable procurement and ethical supply partnership, making sure each step of the supply chain, each player is ethical, each player is doing things in a just way, each player is abiding by the regulations, laws, and the procurement is happening, and so each of the steps. So it's not about just leaving them as is, making sure that each of the players is doing right. Workforce well-being and training programs. Okay, this is where we fit in. Like I said, we Educator is basically a training firm where we already have 2 or 3 clients in Mumbai, where so like I said, I'm from financial industry, so we have few clients already there, and also we are guiding a startup here in Hyderabad who are into battery swapping technologies. So we will be really happy in case if anyone is interested we can always, be of help to you in terms of providing training programs. And so, okay, workforce well-being. So again, it's very important thing that if the workforce is good, the operations are good, the results are good. So the workforce has to be treated properly. We have to listen to the grievances, making sure they are in a right environment for working. Incorporating digital tools for traceability and risk management. I think I was a part of session yesterday or the day before, Mr. Abdul. So Chris talked about digital twin. I think it was yesterday, if I'm not wrong. So these AI, blockchain, digital twins, these topics, they sound to be very complex. I mean, they seem to be cost intensive. They seem to be complex. People think that an SME cannot afford this. And I know someone who's actually invested in electric vehicles, not going to the biggies, but to a small firm operating out of a small town in Tamil Nadu. They went there, they made sure they sourced enough thing at a very competitive cost. They are they're super happy about it. So I met this guy and he said why people think about investing a lot. It all requires a little research, making sure that there are a lot of players who can do things for you at a competitive price. Then obviously there are people talk about it about quality and all, but again, so there should be some trade in between how much we are spending, and if you don't have enough budget, why don't we try the local skilled people and local knowledge people. So yeah, incorporating digital tools, there are a lot of things which are coming in the market. There are a lot of things, research a little bit and you'll find plethora of these, so these can be incorporated. I promise that these going to make things very very easy for you. A lot of things can be automated. A lot of things can be tracked, traced. So incorporating digital tools is one of the very important strategies for ESG integration. Circular economy practices, again, it's reduce, reuse, and recycle. So this is something which is very important. Again, we have to make sure we have to understand if there are any ways of managing the waste. If a particular part of a particular product, which is the result, a byproduct of something, can be used somewhere. There are people who buy those things, they use for their own good. So certain things have to be thought about, certain things have to be discussed about, and then come up with people who are actually in need of certain byproducts, which for you, for me, may be useless, right? I'll take a pause here. I just wanted to check what's the time, how much.
Yeah.
Sure. Right. Okay. I'll quickly finish it. Maybe I'll take questions in a few times. Abdul sir, so is it okay if I go 5 minutes into the
Yeah.
time?
Yes, yes, yes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Okay. So green tech, which I spoke about, the manufacturing industry, we have geothermal, solar, wind energy systems, high efficiency pumps. LED lighting is something which we actually see. A lot of things have been converted to LED. India is a very good example. Hyderabad is a very good example how we convert into LED lighting. 3D printing, making sure the typical metals are not being used. You can use 3D printing to come up with something which can be done at a fraction of the cost. AI, ML, digital twins, Internet of Things, which I just spoke about. Closed loop recycling systems, which again is related to the circular economy. Algae-based products and biopolymers. This is more from a textile perspective or from a petrochemical perspective. There are certain alternatives, just not relying on fossil fuels and something for making plastic and all. There are algae-based products as well. Zero liquid discharge systems. So we see a lot of things in the airports where there are a lot of things which do not actually result in water wastage and all. And also the machines may not sometimes discharge a lot of water, which can be stopped. So zero liquid discharge systems. Pyrolysis, so there won't be any combustion. So it's basically destroying something without releasing any gaseous substance into the air, no combustion. Lightweight materials use, there are definitely alternatives in it, like mobile phones, they're becoming lighter and lighter. What they're doing, they are looking for some other materials where they can actually use lightweight ones. Carbon usage, capture and usage. So this is basically a net zero concept where you actually release, say, 100 megatons. You try to capture 50 tons of it by digging pits or making sure. It is called sequestration. So this is also can be thought about. Advanced coatings, So, I mean, something which is used from a plastic or a petrol perspective, we can think of some advanced coatings which are coming into the market, which use less petroleum, which is use less oil-based products. Green hydrogen. I know a very enthusiastic guy whom I met like a month ago, who's into this business, green hydrogen. He's really unhappy about what's going on in India, except for one state where they have a hydrogen policy. I mean, India has a policy, but again, state governments aren't really too keen about going into it. So, green hydrogen as an energy source. I mean, I can connect any one of you with this guy who's brilliant. He studied in Germany. He's come back to India to make sure that his Madhrubhumi or whatever say to have a very good use of whatever is learned there. BESS, again, it's more like a sequestration where so the biomedical or bio waste is sequestered, make sure it is made into a useful thing. Electrochemical processes, you must have heard of chemicals being used to remove rust, etc., in machinery and all. There can be some other electrochemical processes where people can actually use alternatives other than using the acids and all which are currently using biodegradable or recyclable packaging materials, which I think Mr. Rajesh has spoke about when he was talking about the supply chain thing. The supply chain, of course, renewable energy usage, e-vehicles, hydrogen-based, I just spoke about, circular supply chain technology, Internet of Things, blockchain, AI and ML, digital twins, smart packaging technology, warehouse automations, which again, I think Mr. Rajesh has spoke very well about, how to automate warehouses. How, say, I think IKEA in Hyderabad has, or Amazon in the US has this warehouse automation techniques where the reverse logistics parts get back to the shelf where they're picked from. So it's basically an automation of reverse logistics. Green procurement platforms. There are a lot of suppliers who are into green way of doing things. Route optimization. Obviously, for supply chain, for someone who's taking A to B, it takes 10 kilometers. Find out a way it takes only 4 kilometers. So the route optimization technologies are also in vogue these days. Modular logistics designs. I'll give you an example. I think it's IKEA, where you have these flat ones instead of the bulky ones. You have this flat where you have to do a DIY, right? So modular logistics designs. It gives more space for the trucks that are being used to transport stuff. So this is one of the things that we can consider. Waste to energy solutions against circular economy. Cold storage with renewable energy. Cold storage, when you have a lot of freezers inside it, why don't we think about renewable energy powering them? Using carbon accounting tools, which is very helpful and useful in terms of how much emissions that we are making, we can reduce on it. Predictive analytical tools. So it's again, which is related to your AI and ML. We can use AI and ML to predict this one. And water efficient technology. Again, there is a firm called Watershed which helps you in using water efficiently and making sure the water is not wasted. So that's I'll definitely send this deck to each one of you. We can go through it and do some research affect positively your firms. Case studies. Again, I'll just go by, and this is one of the guys I met from JSW Cement, who spoke about how they have come up with a strategy and policies in terms of, because cement is one of those hard to abate industries, and they have to make sure that they comply, or they have to make sure they give something in return to the environment, which is good. Now they have come up with very good policies and some thing called co-create. It's called the 7 pillars of it, which are the drivers of change for them. They made sure they resorted to electric vehicles. They're also thinking of putting up hydrogen run vehicles, and also clinkers that they use to make cement. That looking for alternative or alternate technologies using some other materials. They're doing a lot of things in research and understanding if certain things, calcium carbonate and some other carbon related raw materials which are used to produce cement, can be replaced with the sustainable friendly materials. So this is one of the case studies. Unilever, again, the behemoth, the mammoth player, the retail and so on. So they were also very good in terms of, they have a very good policy in terms of how to improve the health of the planet, well-being of the people, and also how to have a more socially inclusive world. And they got a very good rating, 90 out of 100 by the S&P Dow Jones Index in 2020. And they have some 27 ESG metrics to deal with. Emerging trends, again, it's something very close to what I've spoken of what's happening in the current world. I wouldn't take you through this in the interest of time. Again, measuring ESG success. Why? I'll go through the headlines. So what it does basically, what happens when you measure ESG success? It demonstrates commitment and accountability. People will look upon you saying that, look up to you saying that they've done a very good job. They have a commitment towards environment, social and governance parts of it, also accountability to it. Strategic goals, the SDGs that I spoke about, it aligns, gives a good picture to the regulators and gives also good scores for us. Enhances operational efficiency, though not immediately, but in the long run, you will see the results in terms of adapting technology. Competitive advantage, investors queue up. They will be ready to pump money into it. Make sure maybe if the scores are good. Reputation and brand value, they're all really interlinked. So once an investor comes, puts money, obviously reputation goes up, brand value goes up, future readiness. Now, if I adopt a technology now, I'm getting future ready and I'm making sure that in the future I'm happy and I will be really making tons of money out of it because I've invested something like a decade ago. And how ESG is measured. So energy efficiency, the industry stalwarts must be knowing energy consumption per unit of production, how the GHG gases are say calculated in terms of how much scope 1, 2, 3 emissions are being done. Reduction from the previous year, it's a good sign, obviously. Increase, it's a bad sign. Energy consumption also reduction is a good sign. Tracking water consumption, waste generation, raw material efficiency is a way of understanding how much water we're consuming, how much waste is being generated and reused. Raw material, how efficient the raw material is. Again, renewable energy, how among all the percent of energy that is used from renewable sources, what percentage is, from all the sources, what percentage is renewable? So this increase in this is a very good sign of that ESG is successfully implemented or integrated. Social labor rights and standards, violations, fair labor practices, injury rates and fatalities, gender diversity, retention rates and employee satisfaction scores, local community programs, how much we are investing. This is typically the CSR part of it. So less accidents, higher diversity, lesser injury rates, lesser fatalities, lesser labor law violations, greater audits, higher fair labor practices. It's a good sign. Supply chain transparency, how many percent of suppliers modify ESG compliance, traceability of raw materials, where one can use blockchain technology in understanding how the traceability can be done for raw materials at each step. Ethical governance, again, how many bribery incidents happen, how many suppliers are adhering to code of conduct. Legal fines. So I know a company in Europe who's like getting fined every quarter. Now they were seeking, so we have a branch in the UK, and then some people are actually coming to us asking, how to deal with it and how to reduce the fines. They're not talking about avoiding altogether, they're talking about reducing the fines. Okay, risk management, again, ESG risk identified and mitigated. How one identifies the risks, be it climate related, social related, governance related, economy related. So how those risks are identified and mitigated. This is just an example of I will take the pillar front, but I'll show you how the letter rating leader and what is a leader, what is a laggard. It's very similar to how the credit rating is done for firms. So like you have a AAA, AA, A. What leaders, A, triple B, and B are average, and B and triple C are laggards. So it's basically top 2 or maybe top 3 will draw the attention of a lot of investors. So companies should strive to move up the ladder under this one. So getting in alliance with these companies, rating institutions will help a lot in the future, because that's where we get exposure. We get good exposure in terms of where we are, where do we stand. Challenges and addressing the challenges. See, I think I've spoken about this particular thing, but I would like to talk about one important thing, which is highlighted in yellow here. Now, a lot of people think ESG is something which is handled by, say, someone who wears a tie, wears a blazer, sits, the AC cabins, and he takes the decisions. No, definitely no. ESG is something which has to be integrated deep into the firm, deep into the enterprise. It's very similar to enterprise risk management. someone who is at a janitor level, or someone who is at sitting on the top of the hierarchy, is an important part of making a ESG core part of the business strategy. Everyone has to come up with ideas, making sure ESG is just not a different department altogether, but is a business strategy which is imbibed in the blood of the organization. So once this is done, this will help you attain greater heights in terms of the success of the firm, in terms of what you're giving back to the society, in terms of how you're treating your employees, how the whole thing is being governed. So the rest of the things, again, I spoke about it in something which is covered already, but this one which I haven't, which I thought I would tell you, it's just not ESG, it's not a separate department, but a core integral part of business strategy.
Perfect.
These are certain numbers here. So how manufacturing market is projected to reach 4.4 trillion. It's a global numbers at a compounded rate of 9.5%. 120 billion in annual investments are expected global by 2030 for supply chain management. So that's where if people comply, people get investors. Firms comply, firms get investors. Non-compliance penalties for governance-related issues, 16 billion. If you see the right most star, whatever that banner is. 65% of Fortune 500 companies have dedicated these committees at the board level. 85% of investors, 85%, it's a big figure of investors consider ESG factors crucial in this investment decisions. So I picked all these numbers from the biggies, the PwCs, Deloitte's, McKinsey's, EY's. So they have an importance. These numbers definitely have an importance in terms of how important ESG is. Okay, India. Okay, India is something where it's more a laggard, because 50% of large companies have successfully integrated ESG, but 29% of only 29% of SMEs did that. This is where we want to get in. We want to make sure the SMEs are well learned about what ESG is, how one can integrate into it. So, like I said, we are basically into training people understand how ESG works, how one can actually assist or how can contribute in integrating ESG in one's firm. So, okay, ESG integration in supply chain manufacturing is no longer an option. Definitely not an option. It's a necessity. It increases operational efficiency, definitely mitigates risks, builds stakeholder trusts. A lot of opportunities in the market. Just one good rating from one of these big rating agencies, there you're gonna get billions of dollars just getting pumped into kitty. There are definitely challenges which can be overcome by proper strategic planning, good technology adoption, cost-effective technology adoption, and having a collaborative efforts. By being a part of alliances, by being a part of consortiums, talking to people, understanding them, being part of, say banks has one consortium. Big financial institutions have one consortium. Technological companies have one consortium. So being a part of such consortiums, so such networking parts will definitely help in long term. Okay, and one last part of it, how we can help, and I just wantedly put it at the last, so just not to bore you with what we do. So we are basically into training companies. Like I said, we have 3 or 4 clients, albeit not in manufacturing and supply chain industries, but in financial services and battery swapping industries. But we have very good team who are industry agnostic. They have very good research being done in their gamut of things, and then they're very much helpful in setting up ESG framework in someone who's not already into it. So we have good workshops in ESG fundamentals, sector-specific ESG insights, double materiality assessment training, regulatory and reporting standards, which is very important. Regulatory and reporting standards. In the future, we have India tightening the screws a little, because 2070 is where we are going to reach. And then, but again, India come up with a lot of things. So this is something which is very important. Employee engagement programs. We have very good interactive sessions, workshops involving each one of them, making a part of how they come up with ideas. Data collection and analysis training. Data collection is something which is again a challenge, and we are making sure the data collected is good quality and helps integrating ESG. Workshops again, what are the innovative trends that are happening? We also help organizations build ESG teams. Tools, there are a lot of tools which are available. We have Sustainalytics and a few other tools which we have licenses to. So if someone wants to have it, we can train on their behalf by labeling those. and tailored ESG training modules, more like a learning management system where we can help create those learnings like courses where we give certifications and all, which is in pipeline, but we're going to come up with this very soon. I'm sorry I've taken enough time. I'm just checking the time. I've taken 15 minutes more, but if you have any questions, sir, maybe Abdul sir, you can ask on the participants' behalf. Otherwise, I'll just drop my email ID.
Yeah.
You can drop me mail anytime, or I can also give my mobile number. You can always call me and ask me any questions you have.
Yeah, put it in the comments. We will just communicate.
Jithendra, this is Deepika. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, Deepika, tell me. Yeah.
So, Jithendra, how can ESG play a crucial role in FMCG industry, mainly in, to tackle the adulteration thing that is happening widely these days in the Indian foods industry?
Right. That's a very good question, Deepika. So I spoke about one of the technologies, blockchain technology. So what happens is FMCG, say, I gave Unilever as one of the examples there. They use blockchain technology at each of the steps, right? Now, say even I prepared it properly, I made sure the product is good, but the consumer, the retail or the wholesale store which is selling it to it may adulterate it, may put some impurities in it and make sure, do something nasty in there. So when you have a blockchain technology, you have a control over what's happening at each of the steps, right from sourcing the raw material on one side to someone who's buying in a local kirana mart or a retail mart. You have a control over it. So again, India is definitely, I'm sorry to say, but laggard in this case, but adapting to such technologies will definitely help. Even a small or medium FMCG thing, a firm can think over putting some extra bucks in adapting to blockchain technology, making sure each of the steps, quality checks here and there, result will be super. I assure you. I mean, I've seen a lot of examples. I've been attending a lot of events where people spoke about how this particular thing can be controlled or curtailed. In fact, controlled is the wrong word. Curtailing is the right word, because raw materials can be impure. If they are not properly being cleansed or not properly being taken care of in removing impurities, it can also be a big. So curtailing at the right first step will help. Blockchain will help you in this regard.
It's a big topic. Okay, it's a big topic. I think it needs a separate discussion. But anyways, I think due to lack of time, so we have to manage the time. Okay, because Dr. Kalyan is already joined.
I'm so sorry about it.
One thing is just I want to tell that so far organizations are focusing on governance.
Right.
Since inception, maybe a couple of centuries. So they were more focusing on governance, which in turn to do bad practices environmentally and also socially. So this resulted in, yes, the companies have grown, they made money, and then there is a capitalism. So recently, we have realized that only governance is not going to help. So you have to have a sustainability, which is environmental friendly, to take care of everybody and everything. Environment includes everything, and then also you need to be socially responsible. So all these things together, so ESG is one of the very important initiatives any organization is doing. And now, especially the direct impact is coming to the investors. So now investors are looking at ESG as one of the key decision-making point. So that's how the ESG is now paying more attention, because every company is looking for the investments. Investors are definitely ESG conscious now. So that is one thing. Okay. The second thing, Jithendra garu, is now each industry, if you want to do an assessment, so each industry has its own questionnaire or its own mechanism. Okay, and it differs from one industry to another industry. Right, so for manufacturing, there is a separate questionnaire to do the assessment. For logistics, there is another. So how can we get these questionnaires? I know these questionnaire questions or depends on the organization which they do the assessment, or it could be in a government. So government should have given some clear guidelines. So how can we access it? Okay, so how can we know that a particular industry like assembly unit or a process manufacturing, what is the best way to do the ESG assessment. So that's from there we start the how to close the gap. So you do the assessment, you come up with a gap. So how you close the gap? So not necessary to answer now, but at least give us an idea where can we find these questionnaires.
Sure, sir. I mean, so like I said, like 2-3 weeks ago, maybe I've sent a questionnaire to, again, it was industry agnostic. It was all general questions and all. Now we come up with these questions by talking to someone who's a part of that industry, or maybe not a big player, but again, someone who's with the industry for some time, who knows the pain points, who knows what's happening in terms of, where they're spending more, where they are getting some beating from the regulators, where they are actually not able to take the next step, improving the efficiency or whatever. So these survey questions come up by talking, definitely, because someone who's into being an advisory, be it EY or be it, PwCs or someone, they have separate departments where they select a particular industry, concentrate on it, make sure they talk to someone who's more like an old horse in that particular industry, get with some questions, and use certain methodologies and techniques in terms of understanding how to structure the questions that are being raised. Now, if I say, for example, if I go and talk to someone, if I give an example, one of the firms I worked with still using Excel. Now, if I go to them and ask them what are your problems, then they'll say my Excel is slow, it's not calculating things properly. That doesn't work. I have to go to someone who's actually is going with the wind and who's actually in who's relevant, who's actually in terms of who's taking care of things in the current world. So if we go and talk to him, we come up with those problems which are actually hitting them. Now, if someone who's saying, using old technology, this is my problem, it doesn't work. So we need to talk to someone, industry experts, who's actually has been utilizing technology, who has been utilizing, the advancements, who is and still are facing problems, Then we've come up with a questionnaire, we drill down, and maybe the questions with someone who's using Excel will be given least priority. Now, if I ask this question to this guy who's using, an AI or ML, then he'll laugh at me saying, because this is definitely not a problem for me, which I solved like 20 years ago. So, I mean, it's all about talking, networking, talking to people, understanding the pain points. This is one of the platforms, definitely one of the platforms. I would love to hear from you the issues that you're facing. And we are happy, and we'll be definitely happy to help you in any phases of the operations that you are part of.